There we go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk. Let's Talk 2021, which is the fourth year of Let's Talk by Tricone Australia. And it's the second time ever that we've been having this event in a virtual format. Now, nobody needs to be told twice why the reason for this format is virtual this year, but primarily it's because we want to make sure that we reach as many people as possible. Obviously, the current pandemic, the restrictions that our country is going through has made life quite difficult and challenging for many of us. But at the same time, there's always a silver lining. And in today's example, for example, we have got a panel that not only encompasses a variety of different professions, a variety of gender, sexualities, and life experiences, but we also have some interstate panelists as well. In fact, you are going to be meeting our panel very, very soon. So welcome one and all. Without further ado, this is Let's Talk 2021, where we talk the talk. Now, before we start, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land, because we recognize their continuing connection to our land, to our waters, and our culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and in particular, we want to acknowledge their LGBTIQ plus elders, both past and present. We acknowledge the battles that they have fought and the sorrow for the prejudices that they have experienced in order for us to be where we are today. Now, obviously, this is a panel discussion and it will not be complete without a panel. Before I introduce the panel to everyone, I'd just like to introduce myself so you know who is going to be your guide for this evening. So my name is Kunal Mirchandani. I'm the chairperson of Tricone Australia. Now, unless you've been living under a rock for the past 15 years, Tricone Australia is a social support group for LGBTIQ plus South Asians living in Australia. Now, what is a South Asian, you ask? I think many of you are South Asians among the audience, but then it's very good as well if there are a lot of you who aren't, because we are a very inclusive group. Specifically, though, who we represent are people of the South Asian, the Indian subcontinent. So people of South Asian origin are essentially those who come from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, or Bangladesh. So people from that area of the world, but also people who identify as South Asian who grew up in other parts of the world. For example, you could be born in the Maldives, you could be in Fiji, you could be from Mauritius, and still be part of this very diverse group of South Asians that have chosen to call Australia home. Now, without further ado, let's bring it on, because this is Let's Talk, and we want to know who are we talking to. So let's start with our very first panelist, Dr. Nasreen Yassin.
Thank you so much, Kunal, and hello, everyone. Namaste. So I'll start with thanking Tricone Australasia for organizing this Let's Talk 2021. It's a great initiative, and we really need something like this forum to start an evening on Sunday, and especially during this time. So as Kunal has already mentioned, my name is Nasreen Yassin, and I work as a clinical psychologist based in Sydney. And I arrived in Australia 20 years ago as an international student to do my PhD. And since then, my research, my academic work, my clinical practice, everything has heavily focused in human relationships and the unique challenges that our community, LGBT plus community, that face, which is quite unique. And I live with my long-term partner, Payal Ray, who I now very proudly call my wife, of 26 years together. So I'm really looking forward to joining and having the discussion with the other wonderful panelists. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Nasreen. Sorry, was that Kashif?
It was. Thank you so much, Nasreen. That's a lovely, lovely start. Thank you, Kunal. And again, obviously, thank you so much, Tricone, for getting us all in together. What a bunch of good panelists tonight we are. Myself, my name is Kashif, and I'm a broadcaster, YouTuber. I do a lot of creative things. Some I don't even know why, but mainly for work purposes, I work in education. So that's my professional career. And I think I met first time Trikone on a promotion for Cinderella. And I remember that thoroughly because that was the best thing ever that I watched. And that's how I got to know Trikone, Kunal, and everyone in the gang. Soon we became Rainbow Friends, and here we are tonight with you all. I am single and I'm living with my brown parents, so God bless me. But apart from that, I'm here to talk about love, and it's a great topic to talk about, especially in the times of lockdown. So I hope that I share some of my experiences. Some may kind of relate to me, some of you may not, but I hope that at the end of the day, maybe I learned something from you and you learned something from me with Let's Talk. So thank you, everyone.
I was just saying that's great, Kashif. And the idea is that we all learn something from each other because we all have very different experiences. But then there's somebody out there who might be able to relate to one small thing that you will say that's possibly going to change her or his life. So yeah, no pressure. Next up.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, first of all, Trikone and Kunal, for getting us together and organizing this brilliant event. Events like this really make you reflect on yourself. I'm Sneha Sopti, and my pronouns are she and her. I'm an electrical engineer by profession and an extremely creative person at heart. I love speaking, writing, and organizing events to bring awareness. In particular, I'm passionate about social impact, especially LGBTQ+ and women's rights. From my own experiences, I've come to realize that owning our voice, speaking up, and telling our story are revolutionary acts. They can not only heal and empower ourselves, but also others. Last year in lockdown, I came out to my mom and brother. And this year in lockdown, I established a pride group at my workplace. And I've started a blog recently to share my journey navigating life as a queer, migrant, South Asian woman living in Australia, in the hope that it may help someone struggling, like I once did 3 years ago when I came down here. There's minimal representation of queer South Asian women, and I want to try and do my bit and be out there because I know sharing our stories help. It did a lot in my self-acceptance. Thank you.
Thanks, Sneha. Well, I'm sure we'll get to find out more about that blog that you've started over the course of this evening. Next up, let's speak with Dr. Shiva.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Shiva Chandra, and I am a researcher at the Institute of Culture and Society at Western Sydney University. I'm also an organizer at FOB Gays Plus, which you might have come across. And we are an organization for queer South Asians and their friends and families. And everyone, I wasn't going to talk about this, but everyone seems to be talking about the first time they met someone or something like that. And the first time I think I saw Kunal ever was on a video, at some random video in a performance or something like that. So there you go.
It wasn't Let's Talk, was it?
No, it wasn't actually.
Oh, right. Well, like you said, the best friendships start on the silver screen. Next up, let's speak with our third doctor in the panel, Dr. Nakul.
Thanks, Kunal. Yeah, it seems like we're taking over the panel, all the doctors. Hi, everyone. I'm Nakul, and I have been sort of associated with Trikone for a very long time. I know a few of you, and maybe not know a lot of you because there's been a bit of movement. I moved away from Sydney a few years ago, and I'm based in Melbourne now. And I'm getting involved in the queer South Asian community in Melbourne through the Queer South Asians of Melbourne group that I have found, and it's getting strong. So everybody who's watching from Melbourne, hi. We keep moving back between Sydney and Melbourne. I'm also involved in another group called Gay Dads Victoria, not that kind of dad if you're thinking of it, but it's for parents because I do have 3 kids as well, which I have got with my partner, who's Kion. So hopefully, I'm here to share with you all the sort of highs and lows of living with kids and being with a family, and share other insights from other. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nakul. By the way, to all the attendees currently watching this on Zoom, if you know someone who's very keen or who might benefit from today's session but could not register or hasn't registered, we are also live on Facebook, and it's on our public Facebook page for Tricone Australia, where we're also accepting comments, questions, any feedback, anything that you would like to say. You could also use your Facebook page to chat directly with the panelists. Now, I've shared the link with everyone on the chat group. Having said that, if you're already on the panel now, and if you're currently on Zoom, please use the Zoom chat box. Now, the questions can be literally about anything. Generally, we want to stay within the topic, which is love in the time of lockdowns. A little bit more on that topic. You'll get to know a little bit more about that topic as we go. But essentially, feel free. And if you want to direct the question to any specific panelist, please let us know in the comments. Our very, very good co-host, Zara, who you cannot see on the screen right now, but she's busily working away, going through all your comments. She is going to filter them out and let us know which panelists will be getting them next. So, don't be shy. Feel free to put your questions, anything you would like to say in the comment box. Now, without further ado, let's start with our first question. Maybe I feel like maybe we should ask this perhaps to Sneha. And Sneha, the reason why I asked this is because I would really like to know, what is it that brought you here to Australia? I know you mentioned that you've come a long way, you've grown a lot as a person over time, but tell me a little bit about how you started your journey.
Thanks, Kunal. That's a lovely question. It makes me reflect on my life. So, I've pretty much lived in denial for 30 years of my life, and I've visited other countries on account of work. And I was at a time where I was looking to live overseas, and I shortlisted Australia because it's multicultural and there's beautiful nature and outdoor stuff here. And it was only when I was leaving India that it hit me that whatever I do and whatever I've achieved was the stuff of my dreams, but I wasn't happy. And then I realized why, because I was living in denial of my own sexuality. And when I moved to Australia, the first thing that I did, and Tricone's Bar Bombay was really the first queer party that I went to. And I made my first bunch of friends here. And I started going to a few support groups, and I sought professional help. I got a therapist. So with the help of all the support systems that I had in the last 3 years, I was able to come to terms with my sexuality, and I've accepted myself, and I've come out to everyone. And it's taken a while, but it's been challenging, but I would have had it no other way. I think it's all added to my life. So I came to Australia with a new work. And so it's all been extremely challenging because I was rebuilding my network here in a new place, all the while, understanding my own feelings. But I guess the silver lining was the presence of support groups like, Tricone as well, like have that kind of social structure around you that really helped me in my journey.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear, Sneha. And was this something that you were expecting, or was this something that you already had back home? An organization that could potentially help you, or a network of friends?
So, like I said, I was completely in denial. And it was only when I packed my bags to leave India, I realized, okay, I am not happy and I need to do something about it. So really, I came to terms with everything only when I landed here in Australia. So this was my first time for many firsts to come.
Amazing, amazing. Now, Kashif, I might ask you this next question. Maybe tell us a little bit more about what I know that you come from a very eclectic cultural background, and I know that you've got a big history in terms of like where you were born, how you ended up here. Maybe guide us through that. I'd be keen for you to share that with everyone.
Yeah, so this is always like whenever someone asks me, in general as well, that where do you come from? What's your background? And I'm like, okay, you need to sit down for this. So it's a story. So my mom is Pakistani. She's from Karachi, and my dad is Indian. He's from Rajasthan. And yeah, they got married and they settled in Karachi. But I was born in Dubai because dad was in army, and then he had to, obviously do the move. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't even know which culture I really belong to. But having lived in Dubai for about 13 odd years, I went to Pakistan, and it was a massive culture shift for me. And I was like, hang on, what is this going on? And it's funny because I had troubles being myself there. A lot of things were, you would be called like, oh, ye kya kar raha hai? Stuff like, oh, he's too feminine for us, or he's too this for us. These are the things that I did struggle, because I wouldn't struggle that in Dubai when I was like 13 years of my life. And all of a sudden after 13, when I went to school or when I went to high school in Pakistan, I had to deal with all of that stuff. It was hard. I would say it was defo hard. But I think that it's something that you get resilient with time, I feel, because it was more to do with people standing up for you, having a good support circle. I remember that I had a lot of girlfriends, still do. And funny
It's just
thing
a different kind of girlfriend now.
Of course. And even in my family, I had so many siblings who were females, so I would relate with them, and I'd be their best friend. And it would be weird, because whenever I would be out a question that, oh, why are you sitting with girls and playing with girls or something or the other, I'd be like, well, because they're girls, and I like being friends with girls. That's it. But you know how it is in cultures like India and Pakistan. They come to think that, so all of that definitely was there. I would always be told, and it's interesting because I started my first radio show in Pakistan, and my very first radio show, I'm live on a national radio, and the first call that I get called by a listener, he says, she says, why do you have a very girly voice? Why are you so feminine? And because I didn't know how to do a good comeback, I just said that this is something you need to ask from my mom. Just like mummy ko pata hoga, mujhe kya pata. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That was a great comeback. And also, one can be proud of having a feminine voice, a girly voice, and it's a very powerful voice. So yeah.
For sure. And I think it's all about, I think what got me through was, I just wouldn't stop being me. And I think that that's something that I feel like people still need to do, is just be yourself. Because even though that lady told me that, you had a feminine voice, and everyone in the station, everyone would be like, oh, you're too girly for us. You don't have that male quality. I just went with being myself. And I think that is something that has kept me going on and on and on, and is still helping me out.
Well, it's good to see you're unabashedly you, because that's what we're all about. It's about being yourself, not trying to conform to any gender norms or stereotypes. And that's why we've got organizations like this, and that's why we've got groups like this, because we want everyone to be happy in their skin. Next question. I've got a question for Nasreen. Now, I know that your situation is potentially a little bit different to everyone else here. Can you walk us through what, I know you mentioned your lovely wife, Payal, in your bio, but can you tell us a little bit about how you met her and what inspired you to get married?
Depending how long you have. It's a long story, but I will just give you the gist. Of course, it's a lovely love story. We were in same school actually, and in the same class, so we know each other since the age of 12. But of course there wasn't any love or anything at that point. We were good friends, but I wasn't even her best friend. She had her best friend and I had my other group of friends. And then eventually after HSC, really, we became quite closer during just as friends, we became quite close. But then after HSC, that's when we realized, because we started to miss each other, because I went to other different university, she went to other university, and our subjects were very different. She started studying with English literature. I started, my studies with psychology, and And that's when I started to feel that this is actually something different. It's not just my friend, because I would rush to the phone to pick up the phone. Those days we had the landline, of course. So
Yeah.
I started realizing that this is love. So that was my first understanding that this is so beautiful and this is love.
But I'm amazed, Nasreen, because like, weren't you like potentially confused about this being a really good friendship? I mean, like, obviously, like, you were very excited and you were getting the butterflies, but
Mhm.
how did you know for sure that it wasn't just a friendship, that it was love?
I think, Kunal, you can understand it. Yes, it was also, I was having quite, of course, I was sexually attracted to her as well. So that was very much, of course, that wasn't just for any other friends of mine who were girls.
Right. Yes.
But I had always been attracted to women as well. So it wasn't a huge news to me, but there wasn't anyone that I fell for, but Payal. She
Yes.
was very special. So,
Right.
so in that case, the friendship was there, but also sexual attraction was there, and lots of hormone and all of that, and excitement, and Hindi movies, of course, so we used to watch a lot of Hindi movies.
Oh wow!
Uh,
Was it like everything was moving in slow motion for you? And
Absolutely, and
it
flower
couldn't be.
petals, and all of that.
Oh my God,
Yes,
Kashif is a big Bollywood fan, by the way. He could actually recreate an entire
please
Bollywood
do.
scene out of
Yes.
that.
It's already going in my mind right now,
Yeah.
literally, that song. Totally.
Yeah.
So yes, but of course, slowly, family started to know, and things
Yeah.
started to become a bit more serious.
Yeah.
But here we are after
Mhm.
26 years together, and with family's
Wow.
blessing, we got married. Both of our families' blessings as well. So it is a beautiful journey, but it has had its own very many different challenges, as you would imagine.
As
19
any relationship would, yeah.
Yes, and also being South Asian woman from 1990s when we came out, so it was a very different world then
Mm,
than what it is now.
I'm sure.
So yes, but it
Yeah.
was a lovely story. Yes,
Oh, it's
thank you
beautiful.
thank you.
Speaking of lovely stories, let's ask Nakul a little bit about his family, because I know you mentioned, Nakul, that you've got not one, not two, but 3 kids. Okay. Now, tell us a little bit what it's like having 3. How young are your kids?
Yeah, so I've got the kids are 4-year-olds, so they are about same age because they were born through surrogacy. We did it in India, and there's few choices that same-sex couples have, and that's one of those. But yeah, family. I think we've got a typical sort of Bollywood, not Bollywood, the Hindi serial kind of sort of big joint family. In India, Kion and myself are sort of very in towns very close together, and we both have big joint families. So when we came out, it was a few years ago, a few years before kids were born. It was a big deal, but eventually the parents came around and helped us through it. And I don't think this would have been possible without the parents having children. And even now, and I'm mentioning that because both Kion and my mom are stuck in Australia because of the flight ban in India. So obviously, COVID affects people in different ways, and that's one of the ways it has affected us. They're
Yeah.
not enjoying the lockdown, obviously. So we've got a big household living with 3 kids and 2 grandmothers, and all the challenges that people are talking about. Everything's sort of built into it. I mean, I spent 6 months last year in India because I went back to get one of my kids who was there, and we were, doing that long distance relationship while the lockdown was still happening in Australia.
Right. Well, like you said, it's everyone has their own challenges, but you've got your parents living with you and your in-laws living with you, and so potentially it's the opposite of what a lot of people are experiencing, which is they're separated from their families. So that brings its own sets of challenges, I'm sure, but it's a totally different kettle of fish, isn't it?
It's a bit that some of the other people might relate, and probably Nasreen as well, because we are also a mixed religious household. Kion is Muslim and I'm Hindu. And people who have parents who come from different backgrounds, that could be another let's talk altogether, Kunal. That's got its own challenges when you're in a relationship with somebody from different culture or different religion.
That's right. If there's anyone from ABC or SBS watching our panel today, I think Nakul and his family is going to be an amazing subject for a fly on the wall documentary. Yeah. Now, we're here because we're talking about the impact of COVID, particularly of the current restrictions, which are happening across the country, but mainly in the big cities of Sydney, Melbourne, where over 3 million people in each city are affected in one form or another, where they're restricted from travel. Now, one of the impacts that this has had is that we're restricted from travel to see loved ones. Loved ones who we normally could have seen, but now can no longer see. Which takes me to our first question from the attendees, which is from Rick Maloney. So I'm just going to read this question out, and then we can decide who will answer this question. So let's see. Rick says that he has an observation, really. Rick's partner is in Mysore, and they've been carrying on a distance relationship since he's come back to Australia in January 2020 to renew his visa to India. He is stuck here. Have you got any thoughts on distance relationships, as he's finding it quite hard? He plans to get back to India as soon as he can travel so that he can marry Naveen and apply for him to retreat to Australia with him as his partner. So anybody has any advice on how to deal with a long distance relationship that's affected by something like this? I think Kashif's about to unmute his mic.
Yes. I feel can I just say that long distance back when there was MSN and Hotmail or Orkut was different as compared to long distance now. I mean, you have means of social media, you have means of technology. I think that helps getting your distances. I know it's virtual, I know long distances, but now you've got WhatsApp, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I remember constant messaging to each other, khane mein kya khaya, kitne baje soye, all that stuff. That definitely helps, I feel. Although I'm like, who am I to tell you I'm single, but still, I've had that phase as well. But also I think that stuff like, those Zoom calls, FaceTime. I mean, I'm pretty sure that in Mysore, you'll be having good reception for a good video call, not really FaceTime, but any video call. So I think that my suggestion would definitely be to build that, to keep that relationship going in this time. Regular contacts, WhatsApp is the best way. And I think that you can do WhatsApp video calling as well. So yeah, that would be my suggestion.
Yeah,
You're right. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I think, and I've been in and out, like we've been together for 15, 16 years, I've lost count. But we've been living together, we've lived apart, we have lived in the same city, in different houses, we've had all kinds of living arrangements. When I first came to Australia, Kieran was still in India for a year. And I would say it's really in the heart. When you are in a long-term relationship, that connection that you have with your partner that sort of becomes, and some of you would relate to that, that sort of becomes second nature. You're talking about every little thing that's happening to you. You're discussing with each other about usually every sort of simple decisions you want to make, like what should I wear today and what should I make for dinner? And not losing that when you are in long-term relationship is the trick, but to continue to have that heart connection that you have. And I'm sure a lot of people, still sort of talk in their head to their partners when their partners are not around, or think about, I'm going to discuss this with my partner. So I know, Rick, you and your partner have been together for a long time, I think. And just to ensure that your connection with him stays that way, even if it's a quick text about your day and what you're going to do today, or what are you going to cook today, and just having involvement in that little small decision making, not just talking to him about big things that happen, just that little decision making helps to maintain that link and that feeling that they're still, part of your life, even if they're away.
Yes, that's right, Nakul. As you were saying, and I can definitely relate to that as well, Rick. But also, I just wanted to let our audience and Rick yourself know that we have different kind of needs and we have different kind of attachment style in our relationship. So your attachment style, what is your need from the relationship, is also very important to remember. So yes, of course, we have technology, we have WhatsApp, we have all this, but to remember what is that you are really missing in that. that these technologies can't give. And at the same time, remembering that this is a situation, unfortunately, wish we could change, unfortunately, we cannot change. It's beyond us, beyond many of us, right? We can't do anything. So, in a sense, remembering what is this missing is actually what kind of meaning is it bringing, that are you feeling that you are getting far from the partner? So what can we do, what can you do to actually realize that actually you're connected? So say, as Nakul, you were mentioning that, sharing what I'm going to do, or what am I, or what have I done the whole day, how was my day, how was your day, that kind of thing, which even when we live together, we ask, how was your day? So how was your meeting that you were talking about, that was you were nervous about around? So there are many very different ways of connecting to each other, and your need needs to be fulfilled during that. So that probably then again comes down to your communication with your partner, that what is that you two need from each other, and whether that is being fulfilled through these communications. It's not just having communication of WhatsApp and so many other ways, it's the quality and whether that is fulfilling your needs. That's something that I would like to add.
That's absolutely right. Brilliant, Nasreen, because yeah, you're right. We've got all these technology in our, at the palm of our hand. If the pandemic happened about 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't necessarily have video calls, or the ease of communication that we have today. So in a way, it couldn't have come at a better time. But having said that, there are some challenges as well. In fact, I'm going to read out one of the comments that has been posted as well, which is that in response to the question being asked, someone has found that long distance relationships work if you create dates, which you've already touched on, Kashif and Nasreen. Create dates, and also some virtual intimacy works really well. Also, sex toys. So on that note, a word from our sponsors. Aecon actually is currently hosting a bunch of intimacy workshops, online intimacy workshops, where you are able to meet other people virtually. And if there are any questions that you have around various about intimacy, or about how to have COVID safe sex, then they would be your go-to resource. And I will post the links to their panel workshops at the end of the forum. So, watch out for that. Now, moving on to the next, actually, while we're still on that topic, Shiva, I wanted to ask you, I know that as a researcher at university, you have actually done some work around this, haven't you? Like you've looked at the usage of social media, particularly during COVID. Can you walk us through a little bit of that?
Sure, Kunal. So my colleague, Dr. Benjamin Hankel, and I did a study over January and February this year, looking at the use of social media among 16 to 30-year-olds in Australia. And, we hosted a whole, we spoke to a whole host of people. So people from regional Australia, rural Australia, of different ethnic backgrounds, different gender identities, and sexuality. So we had a really diverse sample. And we found that a lot of young people were already connecting with each other online and finding a sense of community. So even during the pandemic, people were still doing that. So young people were still finding a sense of community online. And that was something that, helped them to, that was already helping them, but also continued throughout the pandemic. So in that sense, the use of social media was actually really important to these young people in their ability to foster a sense of community during the pandemic. It was an important way in developing keeping connections, I guess. Yeah.
So, and was there any common theme among your different respondents? Like use of social media is one thing, but what was it mainly used for?
I think it was mainly used for connecting to people like them. Mm-hmm. So like others, so other queer people. But in saying that, I think what I want to emphasize also is that, at times people were also connecting to people that weren't queer, right? So often people often it can be quite reductive where you think queer people are only going to connect with queer people. But the people we spoke to connected to cosplayers who were into cosplaying, or gamers that were into gaming. So it wasn't always that they were actually only connecting to queer people. They were also connecting to people that had varied interests. That wasn't always just about queerness. And so that was interesting as well, I think. I guess the other thing that was quite interesting was that, you know, whilst for a lot of people, COVID has been quite a tough time, and we know that at the start of the pandemic last year, we heard stories about, you know, people that were queer having to move back into families that were queer phobic in various ways, and you know, that was quite hard. We also Ben and I actually found some really positive stories as well, where queerness really flourished during the pandemic. So what it meant was, because people weren't always, you know, having to go out, and they were actually, you know, in their homes, in their private spaces, it meant that it actually gave them time to reflect on their sexuality and their gender identity and what it meant. So, for example, not having to be you know, not having to perform gender a particular way gave people the space to experiment with gender, to reflect on their gender. So in that sense, COVID was actually really productive to some people. And Ben and I argue that, you know, for some people, COVID really flourished during COVID-19. And I think it's important to remember that, because I think we're so used to hearing so many of the horror stories of how COVID's been awful. There are actually some really nice things that happened too that were really productive for people. Yeah.
That's good to hear, because obviously, you know, sexualities and gender identities are totally different things, and you can explore one without necessarily engaging in sexual activity, because it's who you are, not who you're attracted to. And that, like you said, could be something you can explore because you've got the time and the mental space to do so. Now, speaking of horror stories, going back to what you were just talking about, Shiva, somebody's just asked us in our Q&A chat box. This person is anonymous and is asked, how do you build intimacy during lockdown with your partner when you're both living with families at home? Now, I might ask these questions potentially to people who are currently living with their families at home. Maybe Kashif, can you tell us a little bit about how potentially can someone build intimacy during lockdown? Or what are your thoughts about how this can be done?
It's hard. This one is hard, because I feel what happens in this situation, I think would be, it will be a lot of isolation for both of them, and I can imagine that. But I think that I will take it back to my first bit, which was about a lot of, you know, social media, like, you know, not even social media, but actually using means like WhatsApp and stuff like that to talk to each other, or maybe perform certain things with each other, little, you know, cute date meet, alone in the room kind of thing. I would suggest that. And I think there's, I was going to do something else as well. Yes, let's just say that if you guys are living in the same LGA, right? That kind of helps. That means walks together, parks together, you know, stuff like that. Maybe even a slight touch with each other, like, you know, I mean, walking with hands, holding hands, or a little kiss on the cheek or kiss on the lips. And, you know, obviously when you're walking, there's a lot of things that you do. But obviously, depending which park you go to, so you need to be very careful of that. But I think you could pull it off if you're in the same LGA. But if you're not, that's when, you know, means like technology come into play. And I would suggest that if you haven't, Acon online stuff that they're helping out with, you know, the intimacy workshop, I think that would definitely help both of the parties in kind of exploring, you know, different sides of themselves as well, because you never know, you may experience and kind of discover a lot during these times through these means, you know.
Right. No, I agree. And also, I'm not exactly sure what the situation of the anonymous questioner was. But potentially this person could be listed as your singles bubble. And in a singles bubble, you can actually engage in intimate behavior with that person as long as you both are mutually in that bubble. And so that could be something, but I think there might be something else at play there, because there is mention of families at home, which brings in a whole another level, and whether both of these parties are out to their parents and what kind of tricky things they have to navigate in order to meet each other. So it's almost a Bollywood story all over again, isn't it?
Shubhanga Savdhan.
Yes.
Right?
Now, not everyone obviously needs or wants to have a partner, and some people are quite happy being in their own skin and being able to express their joy and their intimacy with each other. So let's hear a little bit about Sneha's experience with your blog, specifically around When She Talks. Sorry, what was the name of the blog again? When the Heart Speaks.
My blog's name is When She Speaks Her Heart.
My bad. When She Speaks Her Heart. Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about what was your thought process in getting that blog started?
Yeah, so I was in a space wherein I realized I was, going out of my way. I've been a passionate person all throughout, but I realized I've been going out of my way to pour all the love that I have to my close ones. And many of the times at the expense of my well-being. And I realized with a bit of self-awareness that it was time that I build an emotional intimacy and connection with myself first. Get to know myself. Who am I? What do I like? What are my values? What do I stand for? And really pour all the love that I have and put it into self-love and self-care. Now, many of us know self-care as, bubble baths or like, a nice date night, but self-care is hard work. It's hard work on yourself. And how it started was I recently did a 30-day dating challenge. I came across a nice blog that had listed down the different types of self-care. And it had emotional, physical, health, financial, spiritual, different types of self-care, and all the different categories in them on how you can take care of yourself. And it blew my mind, because if somebody would have asked me about self-care, I would have just been able to say 3 or 4 things before that. And I was like, this is really interesting. And I actually started documenting my day. And now when I look back, I'm so happy. So during lockdown, I started listening to a lot of audiobooks, and I'm big on personal development. So what I've heard from coaches is that having a structure to our day, especially in lockdown, really helps, because what lockdown has done to many people is that it has added to like a sort of loss of control over your day and, a bit of uncertainty as well. So if you have a structure throughout your day, it's like you have something to look forward to. And, when you tick all the boxes, you can look back on the day and be like, oh yeah, like I've accomplished quite a few things today. So I started blogging to detail my journey as a queer South Asian woman in Australia, because when I look back on my friends group as well, I literally had no one who identified or looked like myself. And, being a South Asian woman and having grown up there, I have literally grown up in a household where I was told to place everyone else's needs above mine. And I realized I was just tired of doing that. I needed to prioritize myself. And now when I look back at my dating challenge, I'm so happy, because what I do first thing in the morning is like my hour of power. And if you're busy, instead of spending 1 hour with yourself, you can just spend like 10 or 15 minutes. But I've started having a structure around it. Start my day with mindfulness or meditation, followed by journaling. Journaling really helped me from the last 1 year. It's brought a lot of self-awareness into me. It can be as simple as, if I'm feeling sad, I'll just write, I am sad today, because it's locked down. And the kind of brain dump and helps out, with your feelings and thoughts out on paper. What it does is helps you acknowledge what you're feeling, and then you feel your feelings, sit with your feelings and feel them. That is one of the ways actually to process your feelings. And I really wanted to do that, because Grief as an emotion blocks all other emotions in the body. There have been research published on that. And I was like, I want to process all my feelings and feel everything in its entirety and be the representation of a queer South Asian woman that I never saw. I never had one conversation about being a lesbian back in India, about with any of my friends. And I've had such close friends since childhood. And I know, like, having a blog like this, having a post where someone speaks directly from their heart, would have helped me when I was struggling to understand my feelings. And from the time I've posted these blog posts, a few of my friends and even a few editors and coaches have got in touch with me, and they said they were getting inspired because I just write completely from my heart. And then I'm also building another website for having like a structured article, because now I want to write feature articles, have our voices there in mainstream media as well. I think it's really important, as much as is possible and we are comfortable from our side, to actually put our voice out there.
That's brilliant. I totally agree, Sneha. And I think that you're right in the sense that it could be inspirational for a lot of people who are losing control. And if you, particularly if you're living as a single person, knowing that, you are in control of your happiness can be quite an empowering feeling, knowing that, you don't have to relinquish that control or that happiness to someone else, and being able to assert control over your life. I'm sure it's very inspirational to a lot of people. So thank you. We'll share the link to your blog and potential future books once you release them, which I have no doubt you will, to our audience.
I'm actually very keen on writing a memoir.
Oh, memoirs are for later in life, right now. Yeah. Right now, give us advice.
Yeah.
Speaking of advice, let's go to Nakul. Nakul, so I know that in your current profession, you get a lot of people potentially coming to you for all different sorts of ailments, illnesses, any kind of medical conditions. Has that really changed so much in the last 2 years? Has COVID affected a lot of your day-to-day work?
COVID's affected us in sort of different ways, multiple ways. I think the biggest problem that COVID's done in Australia, in my role, which is more around managing hospitals, is the constant change in the lockdown rules. Melbourne just went their 200th day in lockdown a couple of days ago. So we have obviously lived with it a lot longer than you guys are. And not every time we have a lockdown, it's slightly different. Just an example, this is more personal. Just yesterday, it was announced that the kids can't go to daycare because both parents need to be essential worker. And I just got a text about 5 minutes ago saying they have flipped, and now only one parent need to be essential worker, when we have already organized that next week. So that just keeping up with that, it's been quite tricky. We have to cancel surgeries, and then we have to put surgeries on. We sometimes have had less than 24-hour notice to cancel everyone's surgery, and then I have to deal with all the patients who were actually planning and were hoping that they will get their surgery done. That have been fasting. There have been IVF cases where women have to prepare for almost a month for the surgery, and that getting cancelled was quite hard. We actually argued and got that bit reversed, that IVF was considered an essential surgery. So yeah, that's definitely happened. And look, when I was in India, I got involved. As I said, I spent 6 months in India last year. I got involved in. It was pretty bad in India with COVID last year and this year.
Yes.
So we with my dad, who's a doctor as well, we sort of got involved in doing these home treatment kits for COVID patients who can pick it up and try and use it. There's not a lot of proven medicine, at least there weren't last year.
Yeah.
And that worked a little bit. So definitely things are happening. We are still sort of, this year, we think that because of all the lockdowns that everyone has been, people haven't been exposed to normal viruses. So when COVID lifts, the normal viruses will come back with vengeance, because the immunity isn't there. So, I think after COVID, we still have a way to go. All the surgeries that have been postponed, all that stuff will come back, and there will be huge pressure on the health system.
That's very interesting to know, because our immune system is kind of on a break at the moment, because we're not really getting exposed to a lot of day-to-day viruses. So are we going to expect to start getting sick potentially once things start opening up?
Yeah, that's definitely true, and that has happened in other countries as well. In US, pretty much any country who sort of opened up after COVID, it's the non-COVID load of diseases, and partially it's multiple things. Partially it's because people avoided going to doctors, so they were getting sicker. Partially it's the mental health aspect of it. So the effect of mental health burden of disease sort of happens after the event
Yeah.
spawn, because during the event you are sort of got all that adrenaline going on,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then and partially it's all these infectious diseases coming in. So
Yeah.
we, even Melbourne, the first 3 months that we were open this year, the hospitals were full, chock a block, and it was very hard to manage. And I think we'll see that again once towards the end of this
Yeah.
year, once COVID's gone or
Oh,
reduced, sort of with vaccination.
yes. There's potentially a lot of collateral damage that has come along with COVID, isn't it? Like, people who might lose out on potential beds in hospitals, or, like you said, because of the lockdown, there are incidental things that are affected, and you're just kind of waiting to see what the toll of that will be.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, you brought up mental health, which is very interesting, because obviously, there is the physical manifestation of COVID, which is if you catch it, you get a cough, you get a cold, you get a fever. But even if you don't catch COVID, you are catching COVID mentally, and that's because it's affecting your mental health. It's affecting your viewpoint of the world and how you are viewing things, particularly when it comes to relationships. Now, Nasreen, has there been any incident, perhaps in your day-to-day life, in your practice? So yeah, as a clinical psychologist, have you encountered anything that you can share with us around how people are dealing with it?
Thanks, Kunal. That's a very important and interesting question. It's quite the effect of COVID, as we know, that there is a fear, right? Like, even if we haven't gotten it, we are afraid of an enemy, and that enemy we can't see. Who is carrying that? So we don't know whether that's our partner or someone else that who may have the infection, and I may actually get it. So there is a fear that of course is there. But what I am also seeing, especially around younger people, is an anger, a frustration, a sense of injustice that has happened, because people are losing time, people are losing their sense of the sense of self that they had, that I'm going, the plan that they had, that I'm going to have my, in my 20s I'm going to travel, I'm going to go to this country, or collect these many memories, and I'm going to marry at a particular place. All these dreams, there is a sense of loss and grief. And of course, not to forget the fact that we all, at least I have definitely known people personally who have lost their life due to COVID back in India. So we are dealing with a lot of grief, lot of loss, frustration, anger, and uncertainty, and the fear. So these are very common but very sad reality, and the effect of COVID that I'm seeing in the community that I'm working with.
Right. And how do you recommend people deal with it? Like, when someone comes to you because they are grieving, or they're traumatized in some way from COVID, what is generally your recommendation for people to deal with this?
Kunal, before we deal with the grief, before we recommend, before we start advising, firstly, for me to understand what it means for them, what this loss brings to them. So, is it a sense of loss of freedom? Is it a sense of loss of their hope? What is that they are missing in it? So that is very important, because my meaning of my loss, and at the age of 45 that I am, and at the age of 25 someone's meaning of loss is very different. So we all have to understand from the uniqueness of that connection to the loss. Only because we are all grieving doesn't mean we are all grieving the same thing, and even if we are grieving the similar thing, the meaning is different. So for me as a psychologist, when I sit with my clients, I have to understand what is that they are grieving. And of course there are some things, as as beautifully you were mentioning, Sneha, that you need to sometimes just acknowledge and sit with that feeling, because there isn't anything that sometimes we can do with some of these big issues, such as grieving of certain losses of our loved one, or or loss of job, income, all of this. But at the same time, what is that, then we look at that, what are these things that we still have, that we can actually look at, and that still gives us the meaning in life, to look forward to move on, to actually take it forward, in terms of maybe career, in terms of relationship, in maybe cherishing some relationship. And as Shiva, you were saying that it's not always that it has only brought the pain, also it has some of the relationships. I have seen that people were not talking so much to their parents. Now, since this COVID has happened, the relationship has actually, they started reconnecting to their family, so that has also come. So there is always differences and uniqueness in this effect. So I think I work, when I see people, I work with that uniqueness with of that person, rather than a broad advice what to do.
Right,
that
right.
that would be my answer.
Yeah. And everyone's experiences, like you said, would be unique.
Yes,
And so
yes.
their treatment plan would also be
Mhm.
tailored to that, wouldn't it? Now, obviously, a lot of what you said is that, yeah, there's a lot of bleakness, there's a lot of things that have, gone the wrong way for a lot of people. But I want to know, and maybe Shiva, I wanted to know from you, have you found any silver lining in this situation at all?
Well, actually, so I was talking to my sister about all of this, and we were like, oh, it's so awful. And so I'm drawing on her wisdom, my sister Shivani. Yes, we have matching names. And my mother once said if she had another son, she'd name him Shivam, and a daughter Shivkirti or something. So it'd be a whole collection of people with matching names. But Shivani and I were talking, and she was like, Bhaiya, like, actually, there are really beautiful things. Like, she's like, you know how when you go to the beach and you feel the wave on your foot? She's like, that is a beautiful thing. And you get to experience that. And I was like, yeah, I really like it. I was telling her how I love the feeling of the sun on my back if I'm wearing like a tank top. I was like, that's a beautiful feeling. And spring's coming and I love spring. And we're talking about how, even though things are awful, the mere fact that you're alive and can have sensory experiences is a beautiful thing. And that can be quite joyous just because you're experiencing the world. And and I was saying to her, and obviously a sociologist can't help themselves, I was saying to her, it's really interesting, because if we think about global warming and the idea of travel, right, that Nasreen's brought up, if there's this idea that we are all always going to travel, that is not sustainable. That cannot happen continuously, or consumption cannot keep going on in the ways in which it does, right? If we all were consuming that way, I don't know if the planet can technically take it. So I think it's also interesting when you think about it more broadly, what does this actually mean for actually finding meaning in small things? And maybe finding meaning in small things is important if we are to be living sustainably. And I think maybe COVID can be quite helpful for us to start thinking about some of those questions about what we value and what is meaningful, and how can meaning be conducive to sustainable living. Because big experiences, have certain tolls. And I guess, I took it there, obviously, because I couldn't help myself, because that's what we do. But I don't know, those were some of the things that that I guess have come up for me, and my, Shivani, my sister, who I talk to quite regularly, and other friends. We've also been discussing it more broadly in some of these ways.
And that is a great point, because, even personally, I find that, I find more joy in going to the park now than going to a bar, because, because our life experiences have changed, and they're a little bit more about feeling the bark of the tree on your hand, and you're right. It does spark joy, doesn't it? Speaking of sparking joy, Kashif, I was just wanted to find out, perhaps maybe from your experience, and I know you've had a lot of different experiences with a few different sectors, particularly in journalism and digital media. Was there anything in your experience that you thought, okay, that really brought me joy, and that's something that I really want to pursue further?
Okay, that's actually a really good question. I think something that happened to me in the last lockdown ended up coming out in this lockdown. So last year's lockdown, I actually do work as an actor as well sometimes. Although I don't know nothing about acting, but yeah, at the back looking good, that can happen. So I remember that my agency got me this role, and they were looking for a bearded man lady. Because they didn't want to pay enough for the drag. So it's for a drag queen. So they just wanted, a man who can actually just wear a dress and just be a bearded man lady. That's what they were calling. This was the description of their character. And my agent was like, you can do it. You got this. And I was like, I don't really know. I've never worn a dress or eyelashes or anything. And this is on screen. So she kind of was like, you can just do it. Anyways, I went there. And to my surprise, I wore the dress and the heels, and I was a natural. And I was like, this is new.
Yeah.
And it was funny because everyone was like, have you been doing this professionally? I'm like, no, not really. This is my very first time wearing heels and a dress and, the whole combo. And I remember that it came out this year. It's by the way, The Unusual Suspects. I'm in episode 9. So it came out this year, and to my surprise, I was like, this is something that did give me joy. It was not particularly, okay, fine. It was not just like me being stereotyped. Okay, fine, he can fit in because,
Yeah.
But I feel it's more to do with, I pushed myself. I did something that I wouldn't really do. Can I just say that I'm saying it out loud, but I was terrified with drag queens as a kid. I don't know why, but I was terrified. And it was just my thing. Like, it was just like a personal thing. But then I actually went to Stonewall the very first time here in Australia. And I was like, damn, this is good. Because one of my besties, she was a massive drag queen fan. And, that's how I got back into it. But then when I actually wore a dress, and I was like, it's done nothing to my masculinity. It's done nothing to me. It's like, it's a dress that I wore, and I was as a character, I wore it, and I actually did like it, because as soon as I wore the dress, and I was just telling this to someone else as well who saw me in an episode last night, and I was just telling them that I wore the dress, and it was just like, it came natural to me that, okay, fine, I'm wearing a dress. This is how I should walk. This is how I should do. This is what I should look like. And I should take care of my eyelashes. Girls, I don't know how you girls do it. Eyelashes is it's a hard gig.
It's performance in a way.
It was.
You're still acting even when you're doing drag.
True.
Which is also, I think, what Shiva was mentioning earlier around performing gender. So, like, when you're in a gender role, you are actually inhabiting that role. Was that what you were doing when you were in drag? You were inhabiting the role that you were playing.
True. And I never thought that I could do that. I was very surprised with myself that how I carried myself into that 7-day shooting period. Didn't fall once on set. And I still remember the earrings was clip-ons, and they're the worst. But I think it was that performance bit that got me out there. And I actually enjoyed it. And I was like, there's no holding back to myself. Like, why have I been holding back to myself? So I think the joy part was like, I pushed myself to something that I would really never do ever, even in a party, but I did it on screen. Like, right, that's a good thing, right? Being super private, but then just go public with it. And I enjoyed it. So that did give me joy. And that's something that I am definitely wanting to pursue. I mean, like, I'm down to, do any other characters and stuff, but yeah, that was nice.
And that's great. And you know what? If nothing else, the current restrictions are, I think, a good opportunity for us to just reflect on what it is that actually makes us happy, and try to reprioritize them in our lives, because we don't always have time to think about them. And I think, yeah, that's great advice around finding that spark, finding that joy in your life. Nakul, I've got a question for you from someone in our audience. Someone named Rupesh has asked, how can South Asian gay men use surrogacy to start having children from South Asia? Information around a way to start and prepare would be great, as Rupesh is keen to hear from you, who has had firsthand experience.
Yeah, thanks, Kunal. And Rupesh, I'm happy if you want to reach out directly to me on Facebook to get more details. But this is a good forum to just talk about it in general. There might be a number of people who may have similar questions. Uh, the pathway to parenthood as a gay man, there are a few pathways to parenthood. Surrogacy is just one of them. Adoption, uh, fostering, and co-parenting are probably the most popular ones that are around here. And surrogacy is not that easy in Australia, but it is still possible. Through my work, I'm seeing a lot more gay men who are doing surrogacy locally, especially this year because all the pathways to overseas are sort of closed. So that may be something you want to consider. If you really want to do it in South Asia, in India, there's a huge cultural social bias against surrogacy, especially surrogacy for gay men in India. It's explicitly banned for gay men in India, so you can still do it because you don't have to. Nobody asks you if you're a gay man or a straight man. So you can do it as a single man, but you can't do it as a gay couple. And there's still a lot of health practitioners and doctors who are aware of it, who are still willing to help. And service is still possible, but it's still only possible if you have an Indian citizenship or Indian passport. It is in Nepal. Surrogacy has been banned now. It was booming, but it's been banned now altogether. And I think Pakistan, Bangladesh. I don't know much about Sri Lanka, but Pakistan, Bangladesh were also a bit of no-starters. So there's only few places now overseas where you can actually go and do surrogacy. Commercial surrogacy is outlawed most places except USA. But as an Australian citizen, you are not allowed to enter into commercial surrogacy. Commercial surrogacy is when you pay someone to be a surrogate. Against altruistic surrogacy, where somebody volunteers to be a surrogate because they want to do it out of goodness of their heart. So Australian citizens are not allowed to enter into commercial surrogacy anywhere in the world. So you have to, stick to Australian laws if you're living in Australia and enter into altruistic surrogacy. There is a group called Gay Intended Parents of Australia, and that might be a good Facebook group for you to join to talk about. And there's lots of peer support from people who are going through the journey right now, and with the latest information.
Right. That's terrific. And I think, Rupesh has sent his details, so we can connect that with you. Or Nakul, you can share your details with us later and we can let Rupesh know. But that's amazing. It's amazing that it's worked out for you. And you've got, 3 little tots who are bouncing around your house right now. So congratulations on having that all work out. I've got a question here from Jiten, who is asking each of the panelists and me, how are you guys coping in this pandemic? How are you guys finding balance between your professional and your personal life? Let's start with Nasreen. How are you coping in this pandemic?
Good question to ask me first. I see how people are struggling. So and when people see me, they are actually talking about their fear, as I said, and the pain and everything. So I really need to take care of myself. I mean, we all have to, but there is a different kind of challenge as psychologists and in my profession, like when we talk about among peers, that is a very common thing. It's a fatigue and Zoom fatigue, of course, and all of that is coming. Plus making sure that we are in our optimal, space in our head to help someone else. So what I personally do is, of course, as we would talk about the self-care. So in a sense, walking is my thing. Nature is very giving, and what it gives to me, I just feel absolutely I can soak in the sunlight and all of that we were talking about earlier, Kunal, as well, and Shiva, you were mentioning. And gardening is something that I found. This is really beautiful, that I actually see my plants and my flowers growing, so which is very beautiful.
We can see your plant behind you right now.
Yes.
And
And this has been, by the way, with me more than 10 years now. It's a bamboo, and which lasted, and beautiful, and it gives me company when I'm with my clients. So this is my office anyway. This is where I work from. So gardening, as I said, growing, eggplants and things that I never even thought that was possible in pots, by the way. So all of you, if you are thinking I have big gardens, not really. Everything is grown in pots, all veggies and everything. So that's something that I really feel that something for myself is kind of selfish thing. And also I do it with Payal, my partner. And another thing that both of us early this year, we have, created is a friends group.
Yeah.
We have celebrated birthdays together, walks and tours and those kind of things together. And now
Yes.
that we are in lockdown, so we are helping each other, kind of feeling uplifted. We also celebrated, Christmas in July, so together through Zoom.
Yeah.
So we are doing that. So that's something that gives me a lot of pleasure, and the connection with my friends. And also professionally, we have peer support groups,
Yes.
where we all psychologists talk. I mean, depending on actually how many of us in the. Plus, we have Facebook groups for psychologists, where we share our emotions and some sort of help to each other. So there are various different ways of
Yeah.
helping us as professional as well as personal, at personal level.
Yeah, and it seems like there's a common theme there, which is like, and this was already touched on by like you, Shiva, which is like find something that gives you joy, which is in your case, say gardening, the little things, but at the same time continue networking with one another and keep on, reaching out. Would you say that's true as well in your case, Kashif? Do you find that reaching out to people in the digital age is can be just as powerful as meeting them face to face?
Oh, for sure. I would just like to, share my experience on that, just because that I remember that before pandemic even hit in 2018 and 2019, I was going through a huge anxiety, phase of mine. And what I found was like I was shutting people out, but also I was not having enough people to talk to, because it was always like, people are busy going out and all that stuff. But cut to 2020 and 2021, I think that now, if I look back as compared to 2018 and 2019, I have more people available to talk to than back when there was no pandemic. And I think that in a way, I feel like this has worked great for me, because in 2020 and 2021, I've had so many people that I can talk to if I'm feeling sad, anxious, if I'm having a, kind of a whinge that I want to do for work, if I want to give someone some gossip, I have someone available to talk to. And that's definitely helped me out. So yes, in a huge way, I feel like now the contact ratio for people, even for support people, because everyone has their own lives. But now, since everyone is stuck to just being at home, there is more availability. And that availability, definitely for people who are struggling with and they need to talk to someone, they kind of can cash on it. You know what I mean? In a way, because it's benefiting for them.
And can I just ask you, Kashif, I know that Nasreen mentioned this earlier, where she was talking where a lot of people were, especially young people, who felt that 2 years of their lives had been taken from them, and they felt the grief and the injustice of that. Was that something you ever felt, that these 2 years where you were, you're in the prime of your life, you're going to go out, you're going to meet people. Was that something that you regret not being able to do?
See, my take on the whole pandemic, working from home or even living at home, is definitely different, because I think what I've gained in the past 2 years, I wouldn't have gained before that. So I think it's worked in my favor. I know that that's not the situation for everyone, but I feel for me personally, it has helped me in so many ways. Because I do have because I definitely work in so many different creative mediums, and most of them are related to social media. So whether it is YouTubing or Instagramming or even TikTok for that purposes, it has helped me, first of all, engage with my audience, make more content, because I tend to make content at home and I'm available every time for it. If you want to do a self-tape for an audition, you can do that straight away because you have availability at home. Again, you can also make content for someone who actually wants to, maybe help you or has approached you for influencing. You can do that straight away. So I think that part has helped me a lot, because I really started my YouTube channel in 2020, actually started working on it. And I think that the most I've worked on it is in 2020 and 2021. And I think those creative juices flowing out of me, that has helped me. Again, that has been my silver lining, if I may say so. Because that has taken the diversion out of the anxiety, the stress, the increasing numbers. Now I don't even listen to the news anymore, because I'm like, yep, it is worse. You can't really do about it. But what you can do is that, take the best out of this.
And that's great that, potentially the boredom is something that you've used as a catalyst for your creativity, which I think we all could learn from, because, it's easy to, there's like, a silver lining for every situation. And if you are lucky enough to be in a position where you've got a paying income, you are still able to, stay in touch with your friends and family, then use this time to do something creative like you have. And that's terrific. Sneha, I just wanted to ask you, do you ever go through bouts of loneliness or isolation? And I know that you kind of already answered that in your earlier questions. By the way, we have a message from Sid on the chat who said that he would be very keen for you to give out those practical daily steps that you were talking about earlier. So release the manuscript of your life-changing, Marie Kondo novel, the book that you're about to release. But in the meantime, can you tell us, how do you deal with a feeling of loneliness or isolation?
Yeah, thanks, Kunal. And also thanks, Sid. I'll get in touch with you later on, because I actually have like a structure of steps to follow. It's quite basic, like 4 or 5 steps. But to answer you, Kunal, I think when I look back on my life, loneliness has been like a common theme, like actually many other queer people. Loneliness has been a common theme. And what this lockdown has done is like kind of added to the loneliness already in my life, because I'm an extrovert and I live alone. So, every evening I'm like, okay, I need a human being. Like I need that human interaction. And then what I've done is I've structured my days wherein I make it a point to start my day with meditation and journaling, then, or dancing. And then I start my work. I go out for a quick walk after lunch, even though I do not want to, but like just to get out of the house and see people, smile at people who may not say that I'm smiling at them because I'm probably wearing a mask, but then like, hey, like you can just smile at them, right?
Yeah. All they can see is a little crinkle in your mask, and that's how they know that you're smiling.
Yeah, like the twinkle in your eyes.
Yes.
And then every like 5 o'clock, I get done with my work. 5 to 6, I go for a walk. And then I guess what this lockdown, like I resonate a lot with Kashif as well. What I've done is I've really taken this time. I sat down one day and I thought, okay, loneliness is really killing me, but what can I do now? Like, this is what I guess I learned in therapy as well. Write down the problem statement and then write down the solutions that I can think of. And I was like, either I can cry in loneliness or I can actually see what I can do that could be, a bit of benefit to me. And then I thought, if I can take this time to work on everything that I've wanted to do from my heart. Like I said earlier, I'm a creative spirit at heart. So now I volunteer my time. I schedule my weeks and days in advance, and I make sure I have something to look forward to every day, like volunteering for organizing queer events at my workplace, raising awareness, or started to write articles on my life, and hopefully I want them published in mainstream media as well. But I guess what writing and talking about my experiences has done is it has gotten me in touch with my real core feelings deep inside, and every time I write about them, I feel I get healed.
Right.
And that is such a propulsion for me to continue to spend time on those. And I guess Nazreen was mentioning earlier, scheduling catch-ups and reaching out for social support. That is something I have actively done, like just asking people like, hey, are you free to catch up for half an hour this week? And then, boom, like every week I have a catch up, albeit online, but then, you get to know someone, just find out other ways of human connections.
Yes.
And I am really focused on good quality relationships in my life, people who are pursuing their dreams and goals actively and connect with them while I am pursuing my own dreams.
Well, it's wonderful seeing that you're in such a great phase and great place in your life, and you found a very positive state of being to be in what could have otherwise been a difficult time. So that's very inspirational. Thanks for sharing, Sneha. We only have about 9 minutes left before we before we end the forum. So I just have time for one more question, and I think we've got a question which I think I'll direct to you, Nakul, which is a question from Alan, where he is asking, and this is a pertinent question, is, we have people around us who we love and who love us, and for all intents and purposes are very near and dear to us. But how do we deal with those loved ones who are anti-vaxxers or anti-vaccine, or who do not believe in COVID or the science of vaccines? What are your recommendations on how to deal with that?
Kunal, it's so hard. I mean, we deal with disinformation as, left-winger, gay people, disinformation all the time, because all the sort of right-wing media is trying to portray a certain sense of, and it's not just, COVID, it's trans issues or LGBTQ issues. So that it's hard, it's frustrating. And I just saw a comment from somebody today trying to spread positive disinformation, saying COVID vaccine gave me 3 extra inches. So they were saying, well, if other people are saying that, they can make you important, I'm going to spread positive disinformation, maybe that's the way to go. But really, there's a lot of talk about what vaccine is good for you. And I've always said the best vaccine for you is the one you can get as soon as possible, really, because they all are pretty all right and pretty reasonable and similar to any other vaccine, but better than having COVID. And I've seen COVID. I've had COVID last year. I was in hospital for about 14 days. So you don't want to go there. It's not just those 14 days. It lasts for months and months. Right. And I've had my dad in ICU, and we were quite worried. So it's not where I will wish it on anyone. And I'm sure a lot of people in this chat forum would have had family members or friends or people they know who have lost their lives to COVID as well.
You're right.
So how do you deal with people who are anti-vaxxer? It's like any other sort of people who are spreading disinformation. You can discuss up to a certain extent, but sometimes the disinformation or the belief is so far entrenched that they are just going to fight with you, and it's probably cause more harm to your mental health. And if they're close to you, they are family, then you can appeal to their sort of better sense or see what would make them tick. Sometimes it's sometimes it's really seeing somebody that's close to you. Sometimes fear. Sometimes it's just people have that thing in their brain which only clicks when things happen to them or somebody quite close. And as long as somebody far away, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I think it's a tricky thing. I've had people who are health professionals, nurses in my hospital, who are anti-vaxxers and don't want to get vaccinated.
Really?
And and plus also then they claim that they are exempt from looking after COVID patients. So we said that can't go together. Either you believe in COVID or you don't. So I'm actually all for. I think it's a bit of overreach with Qantas saying that everybody needs to be vaccinated, but Kaiser Permanente, this couple of American companies have done it, and I think New South Wales Health is planning to do it, that vaccination is compulsory in workplace. So at least for people who work with vulnerable people or meet with vulnerable people, compulsory vaccination is the way to go. It's a bit controversial, but yeah, that's the only solution if people are not going to listen.
Yeah. The mandate would actually be helpful if there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah.
I've got a question which I think I'm going to ask Shiva. I've just got one other question here. And it's from someone anonymous who said, "Hi, everyone. Great workshop so far. Enjoying input from all the panelists. But this is a question that this person has, which relates to the dangers of online dating. Whilst it is easy to connect with other members of the LGBT community through apps, one might be more susceptible to sexual predators or malicious individuals, given that one is more likely to ignore red flags in these times." Is there any advice that you can give on how to navigate the world of dating apps where you can be a little bit more overt in terms of, like, you know, reaching out or soliciting sex, for example? What's your advice?
To be honest, I haven't really looked at the dangers of dating apps. It's not my area of study, so I'll caveat it with that. That's a tricky one, to be honest. I think it is actually quite a tricky one. I think always, I mean, I guess it's kind of, you know, very basic advice, but I think it would be to go to do something that you are 100% comfortable with. If you're not comfortable with something, and you really feel like it's not really something like that you'd want to do, listen to your gut instinct and don't do it if it's not for you. I think weighing up the pros and cons and seeing what could potentially go wrong and deciding where you sit with the risk factor. I think everyone's will ascertain and think about risk differently, and you need to decide what's okay with you, because I guess at the end of the day, inherently, some of this is risky, right? And so I think you would have to think about that as well. Sorry, I know, I feel like I'm not being very helpful, but I guess those are kind of the basic things that I would think about. I personally end up erring more on the side of caution.
Of course, yeah.
So that's probably what I would do, but that's my take on risk and how I deal with it.
That's no worries. Let's hear from Kashif. I think you've got a different experience necessarily with those dating apps. How do you navigate those risks?
See, I would definitely first thing highlight that what are you looking for in terms of with these dating apps. If you're looking for a conversation, that's good. But if you're looking for something and, that's not just conversation, it's a one-time thing, or even something of that sort, I would suggest that asking the right questions can be good, figuring out the person's personality and intentions. Because maybe just ask them, or, so what are you looking for? Or how long have you been on this app? Or what are you, or maybe just get to know them a bit personally, which they will, because they're definitely desperate to meet you. But in this time, I would say just ask them questions that brings out a bit more personality, but also their behavior as well as their lifestyle. Because that's going to help you judge whether or not this person is safe or if he is a predator.
Yeah.
I think that would be,
Yeah. And just looking out for those red flags.
For sure.
Do you agree with that as well, Sneha?
Yeah, like I've got a bit of a different take in that, I guess. So I predominantly date online, but, I thought dating online was fairly better when, I was questioning and curious and trying to understand. And then I realized that when you're looking for a serious relationship, I guess it's better to, start chatting to people online. But first of all, be clear on what is it that you want. Like Nasreen was mentioning earlier, what is your attachment style? What style of people do you naturally migrate towards? And really question that in yourself to understand what exactly do you want. And then you can start asking questions like Kashif mentioned earlier. But then also, having said that, I guess when you have started chatting with someone online and you feel, this is going somewhere, you may feel like a connection, it's good to meet up with them in person, because online chatting can be very different to meeting someone from face to face. The connection that you feel online can actually feel very different when you meet that person in person. And also, it's only with time that you can realize if someone's words and actions are really matching. People can type really well. They can really be good communicators in terms of writing messages, but it's only with time that you can see if their actions really match their words.
And yeah, and that's precisely, I think, what this questioner has posted as a follow-up, which is that the personality doesn't necessarily translate through texts. And besides, some people are great liars. So I think this person is probably has been burnt once. So potentially, it's you're right, and it's impossible. And we're given enough time, I think that the personality could shine through. But then the world of online dating is such that everything is so instantaneous.
Just to quickly add on that, Kunal. So,
Yeah.
so like Sneha said, that if you're planning on meeting the person and you've spoken to them and you think that that's all good, maybe like a safety net, just to be safe, could be dropping in your GPS location to your friend before meeting the person as well, because that will definitely help you or give you that kind of satisfaction that if something goes wrong, someone knows where you are.
Yes, absolutely. And as part of those safety precautions, there's also someone on our messages, Thanu, who has given us some helpful advice, which is be honest, though don't reveal too much identifiable information, and always have a safety person, which is exactly what you said as well, Kashif, that you can call and meet in a public space. So just always have those precautions ready. Final question, which I'm going to ask Nasreen. Nasreen, what are some tips that you have on how we can stay connected with friends and loved ones? Potentially somebody who we used to see, whether it's a work colleague who's a friend or a friend who used to visit for home dinners or restaurant dinners once every month. That's not happened. How do you still stay connected with those friends so that you can reconnect with them again as if nothing happened when the world opens up?
So that's actually a very current issue that all of us are facing, about connecting and then reconnecting back when we get back to after post this lockdown period. My take on that has the personal experience, as I said, that having some friends that you really relate to, you can trust, have them maybe in a group or at least in a smaller group, or individual, in kind of checking in every now and then how they are doing, how you are doing, sharing everyday's things, such as not each and every day, but if you say cooked something, a meal, shared that photo, or you came across a beautiful flower, for take a photo, share that. So it's kind of any other relationship, you are actually kind of sharing that. So when you actually go back after and meet everyone again, it kind of doesn't see that vacuum of knowledge where we were. So it kind of continues. We were together and we are again together. Now it's with bigger joy because now we can actually see each other. So that is how I will say to continue.
That's great. That's really good advice. It's those little things, like you said, a photo of a flower, a meal, and then those small connections definitely help in letting them know you're there. On that note, can I just ask, and this is something the panel doesn't know about, but can I just ask everyone in the panel just to very quickly, off the top of their heads, tell me one thing that they're grateful for? And I'm going to start with Shiva.
Black coffee in the morning.
Brilliant. I know. Nothing quite starts the heart like black coffee. What about you, Nakul?
Look, family, kids, and a little bit of the lockdown, because it's caused the life space to slow down a little bit and for us to appreciate our surroundings a bit more.
I can see you're a glass half full kind of person. Very good, very good. Kashif, I have a sneaking suspicion that your answer is in your arms, but I'm gonna let you answer it.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy for Lila. That's my little fluffy dog. In lockdown, she's the best thing ever because I get so much time to spend with her. And I think that in general, dogs are really good if you're struggling with anxiety or depression or anything like that. They give you that sense of companionship. So definitely thankful for her.
Awesome, brilliant. You're lucky enough to have a pandemic puppy. Sneha, what are you grateful for?
I am very grateful that I finally was able to get in touch with myself.
And what about you, Nasreen?
I'm completely grateful for my beautiful, beautiful partner, Payal. Every day that I wake up and I see her, that's a blessing.
That's great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much we are grateful to you, the panel, for sharing your time and your expertise and your knowledge with all of us and with all the attendees. And you've helped us all see that, there's always a silver lining, and there's things that we can look forward to, the things that we can improve upon. And yeah, challenges come our way, but we soldier on and we make the most of it. If life throws you lemons, you make yourself nimbu pani. On that note, thank you everyone who's attending our panel today, all the attendees. We appreciate you spending these last 90 minutes with us on our Let's Talk panel. I know that you guys are all now going to be going back to whatever your plans were for the evening, whether it was for dinner or for winding down from the weekend or to prepare for the week ahead. But we hope that you take these next couple of hours knowing that there is a lot that we can be grateful for in these difficult times. Huge thanks once again to our panel, as well as my co-facilitator, Zara, who has been fantastic at collating all the questions. And we hope to speak with all of you again very, very soon.
Thank you so much, Kunal.
Round of applause.
Thank you,
so
everyone.
much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.